This video is to review parent function shapes and equations. So there are 10 parent functions that you should know their shapes and their equations. The first two that we're looking at here are the constant function and the linear function. So this is the constant function. Its shape is a horizontal line. That's what you're looking at here. So because it's a horizontal line, it should be y equals a number. It's going through, this particular one is going through the number 3, so that's why I put y equals 3. The linear function is a line, a straight line, so it's going to be y equals x. The next three that I put up here, here's your quadratic. So the shape is a U shape or a parabola. The parent function equation is y equals x squared. So its partner in crime is the square root. You know, they're inverses of each other, and we'll get to that a little bit later in a different video as far as inverses. But the square root function, the equation is y equals the square root of x. So that shape, you can see, is kind of this part, but just flipped over here. Like that. So here's the quadratic, and this is the square root. And then the quadratic and the absolute value look very similar to each other, but instead of the U shape, the rounded U shape, the absolute value is the V shape. Okay, the absolute value, and the equation is y equals the absolute value of x. The next two that we have here, the next two parent functions, you have the cubic function, which is y equals x cubed. Okay, so the parent function comes up and does that cube thing, that little swish through the origin. And then you have the cubed root, which looks very similar except for it's just turned on its side. So it's y equals the cube root of x. And they kind of go together, and you can see how they would also be inverses of each other. And then we have the logarithmic function, and I put the square root function back here again, so you've already seen this one, but a lot of times students will confuse the logarithmic and the square root function just because they are so similar looking. But we know that the square root function, square root can never, the graph of a square root can never be negative. So we know that it starts at the origin, it starts at 0, 0 and goes up, whereas a logarithmic can dip below that x-axis there. And so that's why I put them close to each other so you can see the difference between the two. Your logarithmic function would either be y equals the log of x, or y equals the ln of x, which is the natural log of x. So you can see both ways that it could be written for you. And then a lot of times that can be confused also with the exponential function. Exponential is y equals 2 to the power of x. But you should think about, your exponential growth. It starts and it grows very, very rapidly. It's, the opposite almost of a logarithmic function, which is growing very, very slowly. And then the last parent function that you should know very well is your rational function. The equation is y equals 1 over x, and it's got those two parts to it, those two little U-shaped parts almost is how I like to describe them, and that's where they're going. And you know that they have those asymptotes, and we'll talk about that more as we get into other videos where we're analyzing the polynomials and looking more at their behavior. So make sure that you just recognize each graph by its shape and can name its equation. If you have more questions about parent functions, please see your math teacher.